Welcome to today's story, one that is raw, painful, and deeply personal. It is the story of a young girl whose own uncle betrayed the very meaning of family. A story set in the heart of an African community, where secrets run deep, and silence is often forced on those who suffer the most. But this is also a story of courage, of a girl who found her voice when the world tried to bury her truth. Listen closely, because what you're about to hear may open your eyes to the things that happen behind closed doors, and the strength it takes to break free. Before we unravel today's story, please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. You're watching the IFWS Creative Pen, your sweet storyteller. I was 17 when everything in my life began to unravel. Our house in the small town of Aderonke was crowded, noisy, and filled with people who were supposed to be family. My mother had left for the city years ago, chasing a better life she promised to send for me into. She never came back. My father had died when I was 12, and since then I had lived with my father's younger brother, Uncle Richard. Richard was respected in the community, a schoolteacher, neatly dressed, always speaking softly to elders. To the outside world he was a good man. Inside those cracked cement walls, he was something else entirely. I remember the first time he came into my room at night, the stale smell of his shirt and the sound of his careful footsteps. I told myself it was a mistake, that it would not happen again. But it did. Again and again, until I stopped resisting and started just staring at the ceiling, waiting for it to be over. When my stomach started to swell, I knew I was done for. In our town, a girl who got pregnant without a husband was considered ruined. Aunt Gloria, his wife, had been away for months in her village caring for her sick mother. That meant nobody was there to see the way Richard's eyes followed me, or how he spoke to me in a tone that was far too soft for an uncle. I tried to hide the pregnancy, wearing loose wrappers and keeping to myself. But by the 5th month, my body betrayed me. Neighbors started whispering. Women in the market looked at me with a mix of pity and judgment. One afternoon, my best friend Linda cornered me outside the well. "Who is responsible?" she asked, her voice low but urgent. I wanted to tell her. I wanted to scream his name. But Richard's warning still rang in my ears. "If you ever open your mouth, you will regret it. No one will believe you. They will say you tempted me." So I told her it was a boy from the secondary school in the next town. She looked at me strangely but said nothing. The real problem began when Aunt Gloria returned unexpectedly. She arrived on a humid Friday evening, carrying baskets of vegetables and smelling faintly of smoke from her village. She stopped dead when she saw me standing in the doorway. Her eyes went from my face to my stomach and back again. "Whose child is this, Mary?" she asked. It froze my mouth dry. Richard stepped in before I could speak. "Some foolish boy from town," he said smoothly. I have been warning her to stay away from useless friends, but she would not listen. Gloria's lips tightened, but she said nothing else that night. I thought maybe she believed him. I thought maybe I was safe. I was wrong. 2 nights later, I woke to the sound of Gloria's voice in the living room, low but sharp. "You think I am a fool, Richard," she hissed. "Do you think I cannot see your face in that girl's eyes?" I pressed my ear against the thin wall, my heart pounding so hard I thought they might hear it. Richard's reply was calm, almost mocking. "You are imagining things." But Gloria's voice only grew colder. "If you do not tell the truth, I will drag both of you to the elders. Let us see if they will still call you a man of respect after this." That was when I realized something terrifying. Gloria was not going to protect me. She was going to protect herself. The next morning, she woke me before sunrise. "Pack your things," she said flatly. "You are going away." I did not know where. I did not know for how long. I only knew one thing. I clutched my small bag as Gloria marched me toward the dusty road that led out of the compound. The air was heavy with the smell of wet earth from the night's rain. I wanted to ask her where she was taking me, but her face was like stone. A rusted taxi stopped in front of us. The driver, a man with tired eyes, glanced at me briefly before focusing back on the road. Gloria pushed a folded note into his hand and whispered something I could not hear. Then she turned to me. You will go to your mother's cousin in Okiba, she said. You will have the baby there. When it is born, they will take it to an orphanage. You will come back and keep your mouth shut. Do you understand? Her words fell on me like stones. But, no buts, she cut in sharply. Do not make me change my mind and leave you in the street. The driver started the engine. I sat in the back, my heart pounding, my hands shaking. Through the cracked window, I watched our house disappear into the distance, feeling like I had been ripped out of my own life. The journey to Okiba was long and bumpy. The road was lined with tall grass, the sun beating down until the air shimmered. I kept thinking about Richard, about how he would go on living like nothing had happened, about how people would still greet him respectfully at the market while I was hidden away like a disgrace. When we arrived, a tall woman with sharp cheekbones and a faded blue dress was waiting outside a small mud house. She introduced herself as Aunt Margaret, though I had never met her before. She looked me up and down, her eyes lingering on my belly. So this is the girl, she said, her voice flat. The driver handed her the note and drove off without another word. Margaret opened it, read quickly, and then tucked it into her dress pocket. She did not invite me in right away. Instead, she said, "You will work while you are here. There is no free food in this house." Her words made my chest tighten, but I nodded. Inside, the house smelled of wood smoke and palm oil. There was one small bedroom, which she told me I would share with her 2 daughters. They stared at me like I was a stranger who had wandered into their world by mistake. The days that followed were a blur of chores, fetching water from the stream, pounding yam until my arms ached, cooking meals I barely ate. At night, I lay awake listening to the frogs croaking outside, feeling the baby move inside me and wondering what would happen when it was born. One afternoon, while sweeping the yard, I heard Margaret's voice from inside the house. She was speaking to someone in a low tone. I crept closer until I could make out the words. "She must not go back to Aderonke until Richard settles everything," she said. My blood went cold. Settles everything. What did that mean? Money. Silence. My life was no longer my own. It was part of some bargain I did not understand. That night I decided I could not stay there forever. I had to find a way back. But just as I began to plan, something happened that changed everything. It was past midnight when I woke to a strange sound, a soft knock on the wooden window frame. At first I thought I had imagined it, but then it came again, more urgent. The other girls were asleep, their breathing steady. Carefully, I slid out from under the thin blanket and tiptoed to the window. "Mary," a voice whispered. My heart almost stopped. It was Linda, my best friend from Aderonke. She was standing outside in the darkness, her wrapper tied tightly around her. "What are you doing here?" I whispered back. "How did you even find me?" She glanced over her shoulder before speaking. "I heard what happened. People are talking, Mary. Some are saying Richard is the father. Others are saying you ran away with a man." I had to know the truth. I wanted to open my mouth and pour everything out, but the fear in my chest clamped my words down. "Why would you come all this way?" "Because..." She hesitated, then leaned closer. "Aunt Gloria is telling people she sent you away to hide your shame. But there is more. I overheard my mother talking with one of the churchwomen. They said Gloria is trying to get rid of you before her own secret comes out." That made me freeze. "What secret?" Linda's eyes darted to the shadows. "I do not know exactly. But it has something to do with money Richard took from the community fund. And they think if your pregnancy becomes public, the elders will dig too deep and find everything." Before I could reply, footsteps crunched on the dirt outside. Linda's face went pale. "I have to go," she whispered. "Be careful. Do not trust anyone here." She slipped away into the darkness just as Aunt Margaret's voice called out sharply from inside. "Mary, who are you talking to?" I backed away from the window, my mind spinning. Now there were 2 dangers: the truth about my pregnancy, and whatever else Richard and Gloria were hiding. By morning my decision was made. I had to leave Okiba before they decided to make me disappear completely. But as I stepped outside to begin my chores, I saw something that turned my plan into a desperate gamble. A familiar figure was standing at the edge of the yard. It was Richard. He stood there like he owned the place, hands in his pockets, his crisp white shirt already speckled with red dust from the road. My breath caught in my throat. For months, I had prayed never to see his face again, and now here he was, smiling faintly as if this was some casual visit. Aunt Margaret came out from the kitchen, wiping her hands on a faded towel. "You came quickly," she said to him, her tone low but approving. "I could not risk leaving her here too long," Richard replied. His eyes locked on me. "People are asking questions back home." Margaret glanced between us. "You know the arrangement. Once you settle it," she goes. My stomach churned. That word again, settle. It made me feel like I was just some problem to be paid off and erased. Richard stepped closer, his voice dropping so only I could hear. "You have been talking, Mary. I heard Linda came here." I shook my head quickly. "I did not tell her anything." "Good," he said, leaning in slightly, his breath warm against my ear. "Because if you ever do, I will make sure your life ends before it begins. Do you understand?" Margaret's daughters came running into the yard then, giggling, breaking the moment. Richard straightened up and spoke loudly enough for everyone to hear. "Pack your things. You are coming with me." Panic gripped me. Could not go back. I could not walk into that house in Aderonke where every wall remembered what he had done to me. "I am not going," I said, my voice trembling but firm. For a moment, silence fell over the yard. Richard's eyes narrowed, and I saw the flash of the man he truly was. Cold, dangerous, used to getting his way. "You think you have a choice," he said slowly. "Mary, you are mine. That child is mine. And nothing you do will change that." Margaret stepped closer, frowning. "Stop wasting time, Richard. Take her before someone sees you here." The air around me seemed to close in. My heart pounded so loudly I could barely hear. I turned toward the gate, ready to run, but Richard's hand shot out and gripped my arm like iron. "You are not going anywhere," he hissed. And just then, from the road outside, a deep male voice called out, "Leave her alone." Froze. Richard's grip loosened slightly. We both turned toward the gate, and I saw a man I had never seen before, tall and broad-shouldered, striding toward us with fire in his eyes. The man's shadow stretched long across the dusty yard as he walked in. His steps measured but full of purpose. He wore a dark shirt rolled at the sleeves, his skin glistening slightly under the hot sun. I could feel the tension in the air shift. Even Aunt Margaret took a small step back. Richard's eyes narrowed. "Who are you?" he demanded. The stranger stopped a few feet away, his gaze fixed on me before turning to Richard. "My name is Daniel, and I know exactly what you have been doing to this girl." Cold shiver ran through me. I had never met him before, but the certainty in his voice felt like a lifeline. Richard scoffed, trying to mask his unease. "You do not know what you are talking about. This is a family matter. Leave before I call the police." Daniel's jaw tightened. "Go ahead. Call them. But when they come, I will tell them how you got your niece pregnant, how you have been trying to hide her and the child so the elders will not discover your theft from the community fund." Margaret's face paled at his words. "Daniel, you do not know what." "I know enough," he cut in sharply. "I have proof. And if either of you lay a finger on her again, I will make sure the whole town knows before nightfall." Richard's grip on my arm loosened completely. For the first time since I had known him, I saw something like fear flicker in his eyes. Daniel turned to me, his voice softer now. "Mary, pack your things. You are leaving with me." I hesitated, glancing between them. This could be another trick, another trap. But something in Daniel's steady gaze told me he was not like them. Richard stepped forward, his voice low and dangerous. "If you take her, you will regret it." Daniel didn't flinch. "Try me." The standoff felt like it lasted hours, though it was only seconds. Finally, Richard looked away, muttering under his breath before storming toward the road. Margaret stood frozen, her lips pressed tight, as I hurried into the small bedroom to grab my bag. My hands shook as I stuffed my few clothes into it, my mind racing with questions. Who was Daniel? How did he know? Why would he risk himself for me? When I stepped back outside, Daniel was already waiting by a motorbike. He handed me a spare helmet. "We do not have much time," he said. "They will not give up easily." I climbed on behind him, clutching the bag to my chest as the engine roared to life. The wind whipped against my face as we sped down the dusty road, leaving Margaret's house behind. But as the town of Okiba disappeared in the distance, I had no idea that what waited for me ahead would be far more dangerous than what I had just escaped. We rode for almost an hour before Daniel finally slowed the bike and pulled over by a quiet mango grove. The air smelled of ripe fruit and damp earth. My legs trembled as I got off, my heart still racing from the escape. Daniel removed his helmet, revealing a face both kind and determined. "Mary," he said softly, "you do not know me, but I have known your father's family for years. I was in Aderonke last month when I overheard Richard bragging to a friend after drinking. He mentioned you. And the baby. I knew I could not keep quiet. I stared at him, unsure whether to cry or thank him. Why would you risk this? Richard is respected. People will believe him over me." Daniel's eyes darkened. "Not when I have proof. One of his so-called friends owed me a favor and gave me the ledger of the community fund. It shows Richard took the money. If we take this to the elders, his mask will fall." I swallowed hard. "And what about me? Even if the truth comes out, they will still see me as ruined." He shook his head firmly. "Mary, you are not ruined. You are a victim of his abuse, and it is time people in this community learn to protect girls instead of shaming them. If you keep silent, he will do this again, to someone else's daughter, sister, or niece. But if you speak, even through the fear, you will break the cycle." Something inside me shifted. For months, I had been carrying my shame like a heavy stone, thinking it belonged to me. But now I realized it was his shame, and it was time I gave it back. That evening we went straight to the elders' compound. Daniel presented the ledger. I told my story, every detail, my voice shaking but steady. The room was silent when I finished. Some elders looked shocked, others angry. Richard was summoned and confronted. For the first time he could not talk his way out. It took weeks for the full consequences to unfold. Richard lost his position, and Gloria's schemes were exposed. Some people still whispered about me, but others began to speak openly about protecting girls and holding men accountable. Months later, as I held my newborn son, I realized that while I could not change what had happened to me, I could decide what it meant. I was no longer the girl who hid in shame. I was the woman who refused to be silent. Moral lesson: silence protects the abuser, never the victim. For too long, Mary carried a shame that was never hers, until she found the courage to speak. Her voice not only exposed the man who hurt her, it protected the next girl who might have suffered in silence. In our communities, we must learn to believe the wounded, to stand with them, and to place the shame where it belongs, on the ones who abuse their power. Because when one person speaks, they break more than their own chains. They open the door for others to walk free.